recording of the Stacky Benjamin Show. I'm Joe, and Doug is not here today. So you're going to hear a lot of behind the scenes because I know I get to play the part of Doug. And we're going to have...
Pick me.
So we're going to have some fun on today's show. So Doug is going to begin by going live. Oh, by the way, a couple things. Somebody last week decided that they would be more than helpful during our trivia challenge. Oh. Please don't do that. Do not put your answer. Do not go to Google and look up the answer and then share it in the chat, please. Let's keep the show fun.
You were.
Yeah. You were gone.
Yes.
It messed with us, OG. And as a result, despite the fact that your substitute guessed first and guessed before the answer was presented in chat, you still got the point. So.
Oh, well, there you go. All
right
in the world then.
Yep.
Or did Paul?
Yeah. No, he got it.
Yeah.
Okay. All right.
Yeah, you're fine.
And he's... All right. So here's so anyway, but do please besides that, please play along, say hi, tell us where you're from, and we will try to include you in the show. So this is for next Friday, and it's going to be this. Doug's going to go live from the basement of the YouTube headquarters. It's the Stacky Benjamin Show. I'm Joe's mom's neighbor, Doug, and on today's show, is work-life balance really what we should be aiming for with our free time, our money, and our work? I prefer life balance, leave the work out completely, but apparently they didn't, quote, love that idea and thought we should, quote, focus on work life instead on today's show. But that's not all. We'll pause halfway through this topic to see who's going to win this installment of our year-long trivia challenge. And now a guy who can barely balance on 2 feet. It's Joe Saul-Sehy. 3, 2, 1. Barely is the operative word. Hey there, everybody. Welcome to Old Age is Fun podcast, because balance is a real thing. I'm Joe Saul-Sehy, and today we're balancing a great discussion about work-life balance. You heard on Wednesday from Cheryl McKissick talking about her family and all the construction her family has done to build America. So today, after a work Wednesday, we're going to talk work life Friday. And that means we talk with the guy who's all work, no play. Mr. OG is here. How are you, man?
I am. I'm having a better internet connection than you are, sir.
Yeah.
Check your settings. I'm hearing every 8th word.
Same.
Yeah, same.
Hi, Joe.
There he goes.
Well, now that we fixed the show,
I was looking at you guys. I saw the same furrowed brows that I had over here. So I was like, okay, I think it's on Joe's end, not our end. Right.
Oh, E. I'm like, oh, that's me. I can tell. I've heard those things before. Have you guys watched? Ted Lasso? It's obviously better.
Bits and pieces.
So I watched the first 2 episodes when it first came out. I didn't care for it, but I decided to go back to it, and it's worth it. It's worth the 30 minutes per episode on Apple TV. My favorite show has got to be Your Friends and Neighbors right now. That one's also on Apple TV with John Hamm. He's a hedge fund guy. He gets laid off, fired actually, kind of for some indiscretion, but not really. But he takes to stealing from all of his neighbors to put food on the table, like all their expensive stuff, their Patek Philippe's and Richard meals and 1962 bottles of wine and paintings and all this other sort of stuff. It's a drama, keeping up with the Joneses, tragedy, kind of comedy thing smashed together. So there's some pretty good life lessons in there too. I think so. You guys got anything fun that's happened this summer?
Fun that's happened this summer. Well, in terms of shows that I'm watching, I don't know if that constitutes fun, but The Gilded Age, so good, so good. Oh my goodness. I'm on season 2 right now.
How many are there total?
I have no idea.
When it's over, you'll know.
Yeah, exactly. I haven't looked ahead because when you click ahead and then they've got the little episode description, and sometimes that episode description, if you accidentally read it, it sort of spoils it.
It's a little spoiler. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. So I try not to look.
Jody
too far
finds
ahead.
the murder weapon. You're like, murder weapon?
Yeah, exactly.
Like, what? There's a murder? The detectives uncover the plot of the president. You're like, wait, what? What's going on?
Yep, exactly. So I steer clear of looking ahead.
Yeah.
So, but yeah,
elbow deep in diapers still probably. Hello, Joseph.
And let me back in.
We've been keeping it.
It's great when I ask you a question, OG, and you guys are all just sitting there, and I'm like, okay, nobody can hear me.
Oh, no, we did say, I said, you said, how are you doing, OG? And I said, well, I'm doing much better than you are, considering my internet connection's way better. And then like literally that second you were gone. And I was like, oh, he's reset it.
Well, what's funny is I heard you say that, and I was already turning it off because you didn't answer forever after I said it.
Oh.
Yeah. All right. Yeah. Okay. So let's do it again. So 3, 2, 1. How are you, OG?
What day is it today? I keep on getting it messed up. Is today August?
Of course it's Friday.
I know that, but is it the 8th or the 15th or
5, 6, 7, 8, 15. 15.
15. Oh, well then future me says that I'm feeling pretty good. Kids are back in school. 2 of them, one of them is going to be in school next week. So feeling pretty good. After school activities.
Fantastic. So you got the house to yourself.
Traveling all over God's creation. Well, I mean, not the house to myself. You know, who is still here.
And the woman who has I don't know, all the stuff going on in New York City. Paula Pant here.
New York City is good. The hottest days of the summer hopefully are behind us. I mean, we never know because New York has like lots of false starts and stops to its seasons, but hopefully the worst of the heat should be behind us and we're going into fall, which is my favorite time because it's sweater weather. I'm wearing a sweater right now for those of you on YouTube because in my studio, it's air conditioned. I don't control the air conditioning. The management does, the building management, and it's freezing. If I could wear a hat and gloves right now, I would.
It's so funny.
Yeah, I'd be in a parka if I had one.
When I moved to Texas, people were like, oh, I could not. How did you even stay in Michigan? Because it was freezing cold. I'm like, really? Like every living room in Texas I go into in August?
Yeah.
Like I swear we don't like it to be winter, but we certainly like it as cold as ice. I don't know what the Great North. Mr. Jesse Cramer is here. How are you, man?
Hey, I'm doing well. I'm doing well.
My internet's going again.
Oh yeah, I hope my timing's okay here, Joe. Because you're skipping around on me, but that's okay. That's okay. What's going on here? I think I'm in Buffalo today. I'm in Buffalo this weekend. Another great upstate city. Nothing else to report though. Nothing too exciting.
What happens in Buffalo that you have to leave the wonderful confines of Rochester to go to Buffalo?
My wife's family lives out in Buffalo, and it's only about an hour's drive away. So I've got a few clients I work with out of Buffalo, and just some friends who I check in with. So it's a really nice. I think Buffalo would consider itself the primary city, and Rochester the secondary city. But either way, sibling cities, just a few miles down the thruway from one another.
Both nice places. And you got, speaking of fall weather, Paul, have you been out to the Finger Lakes by Jesse?
No, I've never been. I've never been that far upstate. So I've been to like the Catskills, which are beautiful, But I've always wanted to go
Yeah.
to the Finger Lakes. I've never been.
Come on up. It is gorgeous.
Well,
Lots
sounds
of
like we got a meetup coming.
Uh-oh. Is that on me?
Jesse stopped halfway through the sentence.
Sorry.
This internet. This
The
is
time,
like
yeah.
1870s internet.
I think it's totally on me.
I can record I can segue there and then Steve can edit it together in post. 3, 2, 1. Yeah, come on up, Paula. Lots of great recommendations. Happy to give you some itinerary ideas. And it's really cool. Each one of the Finger Lakes, for the most part, has like a cool place at the north end of the lake and then another cool place at the south end of the lake with wineries and sightseeing in between north and south. So tons of recommendations and things to do.
Ah, that sounds beautiful. Thank you.
Dan's making fun of my U.S. robotics sports 14.4 modem.
Joe, pedal faster. Pedal faster. Your internet's slow.
My modem's incredible. We'll figure out a way to get through the. We'll figure out a way to get through this, but on every show, let me do this first. 3, 2, 1. Should I just reboot?
Yeah.
Pretty tough.
Probably.
Yeah.
Tough,
Do I just need reboot?
You sound like you're using
I think I do.
Dialup.
The Dialup comment's the worst shade thrown ever.
I think there's a website where you can listen to that sound again.
Oh yeah.
Yeah,
You've got mail.
It's somewhere on the internet where you, just for nostalgia purposes, if you ever want to hear that noise, that one.
Did you? I don't think Jesse, you're old enough to know this, but maybe Paula, you are. Do you remember with the dial-up that like when it first came up or it came on, like if somebody picked up the phone,
yeah,
they would like cancel out the thing. Do you remember that, Jesse? I figured you were too young.
Yeah. Those. Yeah.
It was
Yeah.
like, no, I was doing the thing.
Right.
I wasn't really much on the internet to do it.
Or when you'd be like, oh, I have to get off the internet. My dad needs to make a phone call. You know? Like,
Yeah. We were a little late to the internet party. We had some backwards, and there's been stories about this, like when the electricity first came to the farmers in the Midwest,
Mhm.
because it started on the coast, right? And it just kind of
Yeah.
met in the middle. A lot of farmers resisted it. They're like, I don't like, what the hell would I need this for? I have been just fine without it. But there was kind of, being, rolled out into everybody's homes. And so there's a rash of house fires, and they finally figured out it was because farmers were putting, or people who didn't, know any better, were putting like cotton balls in the electrical outlets because they didn't want to waste the electricity. 'Cause they figured, well, if I'm not using it, then it's seeping out or whatever,
Right.
and that would be a waste. So I'll just plug it up. And that's the same attitude that my dad had about the internet. He was just like, no, like people will be able to like look in our house. And I said, that's not how the internet works. I don't know anything about it, but I'm pretty sure you can't do that. So we did kind of, go around sneak around the back door to kind of get the internet in our house without the old man kind of really being aware of it. So,
Yeah. Fortunately, young people are more tech savvy than old people. So if you ever, you're the best equipped to be able to work around an older generation when it comes to any type of technological anything,
I said I would never be the person that would like lose to my kids and, like video games and that sort of thing, because I grew up with them.
Yeah.
And it's not even, I don't even play with them anymore. It's not fair. They're
No
just
contest.
So much better. They're so much better at that. They're so much better at like
I love how Dan's just giving me hell.
Yeah.
Retitled episode name. All right, is that better? Is it better?
Yeah.
So far,
Yeah,
for
so
me,
far so good.
Okay, we'll see. All right, 3, 2, 1.
We've got a lot of filler material for Steve here to just a lot of B-roll, as they say, to use as the people see fit.
Here we go. 3, 2, 1. We're going to have a great discussion today on work-life balance. And is that really a thing? Should it be a thing? We're going to dive into that. But first, we have a few sponsors who make sure that we can keep on keeping on and you don't pay any money for the goodness that is the Friday show of Stacking Benjamin. So sit back. We're going to hear from them right now. And then Jesse, Paula, and OG are going to talk work-life balance. 3, 2, 1. I want to begin this discussion by reminding people, if you're new to the Stacking Benjamin show, these guys are not work-life balance experts. We are not people who constantly help other people with work-life balance, but we are people trying to stack Benjamins, and that's what we do on Friday: is take a topic that's in the media and dive into it. And on this particular day, I've got a piece that's from MSN, and it says why work-life balance is overrated and what to pursue instead. And I thought, is work-life balance overrated? So, OG, let's start with you. Do you think work-life balance is just this fancy myth?
Oh, there's so much to unpack here. We're just going right to the end of the story.
Yeah. Absolutely. Is work-life balance just this fancy myth?
I don't know. I don't think so. I don't understand. I mean, I like the idea of, having purpose and working for a reason that you're, excited about and that sort of thing. But golly, if we haven't learned anything in the last, I don't know, what is it, 5 years since COVID, that tomorrow's not promised to everybody. It's like, why would you want to, trade any extra moments that you can afford not to? I was listening to, I was flipping through YouTube this morning, and a clip from Dave Ramsey came up, and he was taking a call from somebody who was asking whether or not they should sell the family business. And he said, it's really hard to kind of decide on how to do that in the near term, right? It's like, well, I've got these terms and I've got whatever. He's like think about it in a bigger, like a longer time frame, like the next decade. Or, okay, you're 46 today. If you're 56, put yourself having sold the company, you've got money that you invested, you're living on your portfolio. Like, does that sound like a better outcome to you 10 years from now? Or does continuing to grow the company and potentially, and that's fulfilling as well. There's no right or wrong answer. Right. And I think we look at work as this thing we have to do in order to get the leisure. And I'm so fundamentally opposed against that theory that we start our team annual planning every fall with put in all of your vacation days, and then we'll see how much work we can get done in the year. Like, we do it the complete opposite way.
Start with the leisure days in mind.
Yeah, because I think you have to have, most people think you need to work really hard in order to earn time off. And I think in order to work really hard, you have had to have had time off.
Well, Jesse, let's ask you, when you hear this idea, work-life balance, right? You hear that phrase. I mean, OG was talking about the imagery of starting on the other side. What image do you even think of when you hear work-life balance? And is that image even realistic?
Yeah, I like that. OG was talking about, it's like pay yourself first. It's vacation yourself first, right?
Yeah.
Right. Yeah.
Vacation yourself first. What the image that I think of is, there's so many parallels, and maybe this is just says more about my psychology than anything else. There's so many parallels between food and diet. and then like finances and work and kind of the stuff that we talk about here. Because I think to myself, when someone says like, oh, you need to have a balanced diet, there's kind of this like subtle connotation there where really what they're saying is you're eating too much bad food and you need to eat more healthy food. Like that's usually what people mean. They don't mean like, hey, you're eating way too many Brussels sprouts, like throw some ice cream in there. That's usually not what they're saying. And I think there's something similar here when people say like, oh, work-life balance, the connotation is you're working too much and you need to focus more on some of the free time. And so to that end, I think to myself, like, I personally get a lot of joy out of work. I didn't always. And I think that's maybe something we can get into today, that like my opinions on this whole topic have changed over time. At the end of the day, though, like, right, there's no doubt that too much work makes all of us dull people, as the saying goes. And yeah, there's definitely a lot of benefit from work-life balance, as long as you don't, again, you can't have it swing so far in the other direction that it just becomes life, like fun, nothing but fun. And then you really do need to balance in both directions is kind of my point.
I saw a TikTok video yesterday, Jesse, of this woman interviewing a guy who's, I don't know, maybe in his late 90s, right? And she's asking him for the meaning of life. And the guy's like, you know, as I sit here, I just think to myself, I wish I'd spent more time on my KPIs at work.
Right. Exactly. Like that stuff, the day-to-day. And I was thinking about this too, like the day-to-day stuff, a lot of times on the one hand, like it doesn't matter. I don't know how to maybe explain it the right way, but right at the other, like we don't look back on life and be like, oh, those KPIs is a perfect example. But at the same time, like the kind of things that we all do for work, however we define work, is something that provides a lot of definition to our day-to-day lives. So to that end, you hope you can fill it with something fulfilling, something that makes you happy. And I suppose for me personally, a lot of my work-life balance problems in my career so far have been a function of that day-to-day stuff just not being nearly as fulfilling as I wanted it to be. And when that improved, everything else kind of improved in lockstep. So
that is interesting, finding joy in the work that you actually do. Mm-hmm. And I think about this idea, Paula, of work-life balance. And I remember a conversation I had with a mutual friend of ours, a pretty brilliant guy named Steve Chu. Mm-hmm. Steve wrote a great book about being an entrepreneur, and his quest to get work-life balance, right? Spends as much time with the family as he can, but also build a business that he loves to run. But he also talked about a friend of his who prefers to work in sprints, mm-hmm. right? Where he will just go nose to the grindstone. He doesn't even pursue balance. He pursues, I'm going to be all work, and then I'll play. Mm-hmm. So can balance be seasonal, or should we be looking for balance on run with that.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think it's actually really difficult. Like if you think about the span of a normal day and you want that particular day to be balanced between sleep, exercise, work, family time, chores and errands, reflection and meditation, reading and learning, like that's a lot to cram into a day or even a week, right? It's hard to, on a small scale, like when you really shrink that time, it's hard to get all of that done simultaneously, like everything all at once. But if that framing of seasons, maybe you think about when you're in college, right? There's finals week, and finals week is that week where you're just like nose to the grindstone, absolutely cramming for those final exams, working like every waking hour of the day. And then what is finals week followed by? It's followed by winter break or summer break, So I think that's a perfect illustration of that seasonal, if you think about it in exercise terms, like interval training, sprint, rest.
Oh, gee, it strikes me, going back to what you were talking about, that you begin with leisure time, but isn't there also something to be said for what Jesse talks about, which is getting fulfillment from your work? Like instead of chasing balance between leisure and the suck that is work, chasing work that doesn't suck.
Well, yeah, and I think also, I think as you look at your, uh, as you look at the things that you're not doing, are you not doing them because you can't because of a time situation, or because you're choosing not to? You know, for example, if you really want to go to all your kids' soccer matches and they're, all on Tuesday or Thursday at 3 o'clock, because that's when they do it at school, right? And you have no ability to do that because of your other commitments. Maybe work is that big commitment, and that bothers you. And you're like, I need to reorganize this priority because I really want to be available from 3 to 4 on Tuesdays and Thursdays to go to these soccer matches. And you're not able to. I think, yeah, you're missing out on opportunity. But if you have the opportunity for life, if you have the flexibility, or you have the ability to say, I'm going to schedule my life around these things that are most important, and you don't find yourself missing out on stuff because of other obligations, but you're choosing not to do things. Like, I don't like third grade soccer. I don't care that my kid's playing in it. I'm not going to go, you know, and you're doing other stuff instead. Then I think you've got a decent balance there, and your balance is going to be different than mine. We learned in Strategic Coach that every day is a day, right? 24-hour period, midnight to midnight, right? And some people work on Saturdays, and other people go, how in the hell can you work on Saturday, man? That's the weekend, right? The guy who cuts my hair works his tail off on Saturdays. He doesn't work at all on Mondays. And if you ask him how come he doesn't work on Mondays, he goes, because that's not my day to work.
His
Like,
Saturday is Monday.
Schedule. Yeah, I have exactly. I have a different schedule than you, and he's content, with that schedule. So I don't think that work-life balance means I'm not going to do any work, or I'm only going to, we think like leisure activities, like I spend my entire day fishing or golfing or skiing or whatever. But it's the combination, like Paula said, of all the stuff that's important to you. And is that to borrow a phrase from nameless, consultants out there, is that wheel of life evenly balanced? And if you start getting fat, then you're skipping out on your health stuff. If your, psyche goes sideways, you're skipping out on personal development or spirituality. If your business takes a crap, you're not doing enough of that. And it's just like all these little slivers of the wheel of your life need to be in balance so that the wheel continues to go. If it doesn't, you're going to find out where that happens pretty quickly, or where the issue is.
It was great to see Jesse, the fire movement, get on CBS this morning, a couple of weeks. That was fascinating and fantastic. But it also, made a point. Fire movement really seems to be tied to this idea of work-life balance, right? Adding more life, not trading time for money. But it strikes me, is early retirement actually about time, or is it about autonomy?
Probably depends on the person, is part of my first answer. Is it about time, or is it about autonomy? Yeah, I mean, I think for a lot of people, the way I see the fire movement, like my personal interpretation of what I've learned about it over time, is just that a lot of people are locked into this thought process that retirement is a specific age, 62, 65, whatever. And instead, the fire movement says like, no, it's really just about understanding what you spend, how your portfolio can support that spending over time. And really, it's about a certain number of assets that can support a certain level of spending, and thus open up all this free time to you that maybe you didn't realize you could have accessed. So that's the way I guess I think about the fire movement. And then, so for some people, and this is just reading firsthand accounts and listening to podcasts like some of ours here, or listening to the guests that we have on. For some people, it really is about autonomy and just like, I want to be the captain of my own ship, and I don't want to work for corporate America. I don't want to have a manager telling me what to do. And so for them, it might be a lot more about financial independence, like reaching that point where they can work if they want to, they can work for themselves, they can choose how they spend their day. But then, right, I just think of some of the other stories I've heard from people, and for them, it was, if I can retire at 45 instead of 62 and reclaim 17 years of my life to go off and see the world, that is a top priority to me. So coming back full circle to your question, Joe, I've heard both stories, and I think it just depends on the person who's pursuing fire.
Yeah, it makes me wonder, Paula. I mean, if we're chasing fire, there's the age-old question: are we running from something or running to something?
Mhm.
If I'm chasing more quote balance through fire, am I really running toward anything?
Well, all right. Let me take a step back. So I think my fundamental where I question the premise of the notion of work-life balance is that it pits work and life as mutually exclusive. It pits work versus life as this competition in a zero, locked into some zero-sum game where incremental every incremental unit dedicated to one comes at the expense of the other. And I think that that is not a healthy way to look at work life. Um, it's probably a paradigm that developed in an era when there were no smartphones, when even knowledge workers had to commute in person to an office and talk on a landline every day. Like there was much more of a separation between your home and your office and work and life. These days, in the era of smartphones, in the era of remote work, um, you know, i- in the era of much more flexible situations, I think that there's work and life are much more integrated rather than separated. And I think seeing the way that they can sort of flow together rather than pit them as in the zero sum, like, uh, you know, competition is a healthier way of viewing it. And so then to your question, Joe, um, if the fire movement running from something or to something? I don't think anybody, or I don't think most people, I should say, are running away from work. Um, I think the majority of people are running, at least anecdotally, are running towards a more integrated whole.
You don't think the beginning of this movement was frustrated engineers who just are sick of the grind?
Well, I mean, I guess the beginning of the movement was
Sure
Vicky.
seems statistically it was.
I'm thinking predating Mr. Money Mustache, there was Vicky Robin.
Yeah.
And predating Vicky Robin, there was probably somebody else.
Right.
You know?
Right. No, yeah, the fire movement happened people were dreaming about not working at age 40,
My kids
way
dream
before the
about
fire
not
movement.
working. They don't even have jobs yet.
But is that so? Maybe that's not as interesting as Paula, what you really said that I think I want to dive into. If you're like, okay, balance, this kind of yin and yang is not really what we're after. What are we after then? Is I guess is the real word alignment that we're after?
Yeah, I think so. Work-life alignment, work-life integration. I think that I actually really like the term alignment because that feels healthier because it suggests that the two can work together rather than exist in competition with one another.
Does that speak to you more, OG? The alignment versus balance?
I mean, I see them as fairly synonymous. I think about it, like I said earlier, a little bit more like there's all these different slivers of your life, like Paula was talking about kind of on our first point. It's like if you're not paying attention to all things, if you're not living an ideal life, you will find very quickly where the area is that you're neglecting. And you can choose to do something about that or not, but to me it's not like like Paula said, I'm not challenged to say, well, it's either work or I have leisure. It's not this opposite thing. It's just I have to make sure that there's a good balance, alignment, evenness.
Yeah, because that seems more.
Say.
I mean, it seems what you're talking about. When I think of balance, I think about the calendar, right? I think about managing my day so I get some relaxation time, that I get some work time. But really, what you're talking about is, I'm sure you've had these times, OG, because I certainly have, where I really felt like my day was balanced, but but it just fell off. Like it wasn't it. Instead of calendar management, moving to, am I truly working on the thing that I should be working on right now? Or should I be in the place where I should be? My kid's, third grade soccer match or whatever.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I think this is good for anything. Like in your financial life, we talk about if you don't take account of your money and you don't track your spending, you can't make any improvements on it. And it's not like you're saying, hey, there's something wrong, that's why I need to track. No, you track it so that you can have some data points from which to do something if you wish. And so I think it's equally important. We're doing this right now. As a matter of fact, I think it's equally important to track your time a little bit. Take 2 weeks and say, I'm just going to write down, a good old pen and paper every 20 minutes what I'm doing, or every 30 minutes what I'm working on. And I think it's a good audit to number one, find out what you really are spending your time doing. Are you really doing that 40-hour work week there? Oh, gee, no, you're not, you liar. Right? What is your life so challenging with your 19 hours of work this week, or whatever it ends up being, right? It's like, let's define it how it
11
is.
hours.
It's okay. Yeah. But you can't make changes unless you have the data. And I think it also, like Jesse was talking about in terms of engagement, or whatever you were talking about, whatever word you use, Jesse, about the finding joy in what you're doing. You can also look at that and say, like, golly, I've spent a lot of time doing this specific stuff that I just don't, maybe I used to really like doing it, but now I'm at a different level now. And somehow that got still attached to me. And now I can work, now that I know that, I can work to eliminate that from my life, whether I can outsource it, or I can hire somebody if you're in charge of that, or just delete it altogether and, kind of claim back some of that. But all of that comes from data. And if you're just going, I feel like I'm not balanced, I mean, you probably aren't, right? We have some pretty good intuition there, but it will certainly help to have data. I look at this as from an energy standpoint. We talked about this before we hit record today. My given F's today was at a level of 0. Like, I don't know why. That's how it worked out today. And I tried a couple things, did some exercise, ate some pretty good food, like healthy stuff. And I was like, okay, maybe that'll stoke the fires a little bit. Did absolutely nothing. So today has been an energy balance day. And so, if I think about life as an energy component, and sometimes you got a lot of energy to sit there, like you said, and grind out, like Paula was doing earlier, just head down, just banging out work right after, in the zone, in the flow. And then sometimes you got a big pile of given F's and you're all out of them.
What's
like OG today?
What's the guy's name that the OpenAI guy?
Sam
Altman.
Thank you, Sam Altman.
Paula and I are going to split that trivia point.
Wow. Everything's a trivia point now.
They're like, there's the trivia question. We got it right. I think it's interesting because Sam Altman talked about, Jesse, that, when we think about work-life balance, we think about burnout, right? I work too much, so I burn out. Sam Altman made this comment that he said, you will never burn out if you're working on the right thing. The thing that you truly should be working on, that Marie Kondo sparks joy like that. If you're working there will be no burnout.
Yeah. I don't disagree with him. I feel that way personally, but at the same time, there's this like backlash against thought like that, right? Because you'll get someone like you'll hear some billionaire founder influencer type person saying exactly what Sam Altman said, but then you'll get like maybe a Scott Galloway who comes on and says like, no, let's be realistic. Find some job, get some master's degree in a technical field, move yourself to a big city, find a job that pays you $200,000 a year, whether you like it or not, and then go use that money to live the rest of your life. Like we can't all be the person who finds their deepest passion and also has that passion pay them a livable wage and therefore has the best of both worlds. So I don't know. I'm a little conflicted myself because it's not that, the world needs ditch diggers. That's not really what I'm saying. But at the end of the day, it's like, I suppose it's like, where do we draw the line between someone saying, no, this work genuinely makes me unhappy, no matter how much it pays me, versus the other side of the coin, which might be, is it worth pursuing your passion to any end, even if that means, you know, you can't really put food on your table? There's some balance in there that I don't really know where to put it. Yeah. What do you think, Paula?
Is that work-life balance, Jesse?
When
you said there's some balance?
It might be. It might be.
Well, I think that, I think Cal Newport has some good insight on this when he talks about how passion is often the result rather than the precursor of being in the work every day. So assuming that you have a minimum level of curiosity about some given topic, then often once you dive into that topic, you start to discover, like with any topic, once you begin to learn about it, you realize how little you know. You get past that Dunn and Krueger effect hump. And so once you start learning about something, you realize how little you know, which makes you curious to learn more. And then the more you learn, the more you realize how little you know, which
the deeper you get into it, the more it
Yeah.
spurs
Exactly,
Yeah.
exactly. And so passion, therefore, is often the consequence rather than the cause of going into a given field.
NBC Universal Vice chairwoman, when she was on our Memorial Day episode, Bonnie Hammer said something similar, Paula. She was like, chase opportunity, not passion. You chase passion. You often don't even know. You don't have enough data to have the
Right.
passion yet. But if you chase these opportunities, there's at least enough interest there that you're diving into the opportunity, and then the passion comes. It's so interesting. We record these live on Monday. You can join us most Mondays at 3:30 Eastern time. I was trying to translate from Central time to Eastern time. And we've got a great discussion going on here in the chat. Jennifer says, maybe it's actually presence that we're looking for. Whatever I'm doing, work or home, I'm focused on what is in front of me, or am I focused on what's in front of me? Looking at data, as OG suggesting, to track helps you figure out the balance of energy. I want to talk more about that in the second half of today's show. And Leisure Enthusiast says, I think a huge problem is some of the 9-to-5 companies drain your PTO if you have a sick day or a dentist appointment. They shouldn't be taking sick days from your vacation days. We need a 4-day work week. I think OG would say we need a 1-day work week based on your given F's.
Right now, I'm going to go about an hour and 20-minute work day, work week today.
We're going to pause. We're going to pause there. In the second half of this discussion, I want to talk about, work-life integration, and about a piece of this this article talks about thinking like you're an athlete. And I want to ask about that, because I think there might be some interesting things we can do to help our work-life balance, or whatever it is, more after we have that discussion. But at that halfway point, we dive into this year-long trivia challenge we have between these three contributors. And right now, well, the score was getting close, but last week, Don McDonald scored a big point for OG, making the current score OG 11, Jesse 8.5, and Paula 5.5. So, man, now I will caution everyone. We had an incident last week when Don was here, where in the live chat, somebody decided to put the answer. So please, if you're here with us live hanging out, don't do that. Let's make sure this is a good time. We don't have to change up the trivia question. But Doug, you've got the trivia today. What are we talking about? All right. Doug's going to say, hey there, stackers. I'm Joe's mom's neighbor, Doug. And on today's date in history, there was a headline grabbing event in 1995 that Joe followed closely. Shannon Faulkner became the first woman to walk through the gates to attend military college, the Citadel, in Charleston, South Carolina, which had previously been an all-boys school, but Joe went there. So was it really? If you know anything about Joe's history, he famously purchased a Nautica sweater with his new American Express car while at the Citadel, a sweater he couldn't wear because it was a military school. And he was in Charleston, South Carolina, where you might have 2 or 3 days a year where you actually wear a sweater like that anyway. Nautica has moved most of their sales online in recent years. So here's a question about the iconic brand that helped wreck Joe's financial history way back in the 80s. What year was Nautica founded? All right, I'll be right back after I go turn on some Duran Duran, or maybe stick a big comb in my back pocket. All right, here we go. Paula's looking excited.
Whew.
Like she'd prefer to go first this time.
Yikes. No, I have no idea what the answer to this is.
You were just running what a weird mix.
Yeah.
We start off with Citadel, we end up with what year was Nautica founded?
Yeah, I was excited when I thought it was a story about the Citadel and your spending story. I was excited because I know that story really well because you told it on Afford Anything, on the Afford Anything podcast. So I was like, oh, if this is a story about Joe's finances, this is a question about Joe's finances, I've got this answer.
Well, sorry, Paula. Sorry about that. OG, you're going first. Nautica. You own any Nautica clothing, OG?
No.
No. But it is an iconic brand, and you've heard of Nautica. Well, what year was it founded, OG? Thank goodness.
The wonderful brand Nautica that everyone knows and probably has many, many clothes from. So for me, I think I'm tying it to Tommy Hilfiger for some reason. Are they related in any way?
I don't know.
The judges, no. I don't know why. And they have a similar logo. I don't know. Nautica
Similar style of clothing.
Maybe that's it. Maybe one was at JCPenney and one was at
that kind
Yonkers.
Of 80s preppy. I bought my Nautica sweater at Nordstrom.
Oh, okay. Well, that tells me a little something. That's a little highbrow. Nordstrom's a little highbrow.
Because if you're gonna wreck your credit, by the way, when you're a freshman in college,
don't do it at Kmart.
Just go. What's the most expensive store in the mall? Oh, I know.
Duh. It's so funny. Just as a complete side note, it's so funny the lessons that we teach our kids and kind of, how they grow up with money and that sort of thing. Because I did the exact same thing, by the way, Joe. Like, just terrible with money. No money talk in the house. No example to learn from. And so Alex is going to college, and we're, talking about this, and he has some money and a debit card. And I said, you need to have your own credit card because I'm, Dad's credit card is for emergencies now, not for your daily spending anymore. And he's like, I just won't spend any money. Why would I want to have a credit card? Like, that can just get you in trouble. And I'm like, oh, who is this responsible young man? Like, what happened to? How do I get a bigger limit? I can
Where
run
did
that
you
thing
come
up.
from?
Yeah, no, you did not. You are not your father's son. Anyways, Nautica. So I'm gonna say it's. I'm gonna say it was a relatively new brand in the grand scheme of things. Not like Levi's, 1800s. I'm gonna say it came about after the turn of the war. All the fine fellas coming back from overseas went, hey, those Parisians, those dudes know how to dress, bruh. So we need to kind of get with their vibe. So I'm gonna say somebody came up with this in 1948.
1948. Jesse, what are you thinking? Do you know the brand Nautica, Jesse?
I do. And I was going to say, because I think it and Tommy Hilfiger and Ralph Lauren and some other brands like that were on JCPenney's shelves. Not that I really went into there like that often, but growing up, whenever I needed like the nice clothes, not the Aeropostale or the Abercrombie, whatever they were, JCPenney was one of my options. And yeah, Nautica was there. And I'm actually kind of frustrated because somewhere in OG's 14-minute answer, I was thinking to myself, like, what were the proximate events before the founding of Nautica? And one of my thoughts was, oh, maybe it was the wealth generation and like the baby boomer generation and just the post World War II. So I was thinking along the same lines, but I'll switch up. Because I genuinely have no clue. And I'll say that maybe it was the money that was and then the economic boom of like the 20s. Like the flappers, like the Gatsby era. So I'll just go right in the middle and say
Gilded Age.
Is that the Gilded Age? Yeah. So I'll say 1925.
1925. So Paula, we've got 1925 and 1948. Do you know Nautica?
I can picture the label. Like I have a visual in my head of like the logo. I can't think of an article of Nautica clothing might look like other than my general vibe is preppy. Like you're the type of person who wears like boat shoes, you know?
Basically, think Joe Saul-Sehy.
Think me and you've got Nautica. There you go.
Okay, so all right, you bought Nautica. Okay, within the question, it said that your financial mistake was in the 80s. That doesn't sound right. It was
when do you think it was? The 1940s? What are you doing here, Paula?
No, that just sounds like too long ago.
Math checks.
Yes, wow. Okay.
Sadly, it was 1986.
All right. Okay. Well, so I'm going to guess that Nautica was established enough, but not so established that it was like the establishment. You know, it had to be like that perfect sort of age of brand to appeal to the young folk of 1986.
That's how we referred to ourselves too, as the young folk. We walk around the mall with all the other young folk.
All right, so I'm going to take the over. I'm going to say 1949.
1949. All right. OG's got 48. Paula's got 49. Jesse's going back to 1925. Who's going to win this thing? We'll find out in just a minute. All right, OG, you kick this off by saying 1948. You still have the years between 48 and halfway to 1925. Feeling good?
Yeah, I don't.
You've got all the Great Depression, OG.
Joe clothing circa 1986 is really not my specialty of trivia. I like the fact that you guys have really tried to niche down to something that I have absolutely no concept of. So I feel zero confidence.
That warms my heart that OG just has no idea about Nautica. Jesse, you've got 1925.
Yeah. I feel okay. But I just really like the fact that I'm pretty sure what happened was like it's 1935. Someone in the Dust Bowl is like struggling to put food on his table, and he's like, "I'm gonna design shirts for preppy kids," right? And so that's how it got founded. And OG's gonna win.
What goes good with trying to feed a family in the Dust Bowl? I know, boat shoes.
Boat shoes. Yeah, exactly.
Paula, 1948 and up.
1949. 1949 and up. Yeah, you know, I feel good. So if it was founded anytime in the 1950s or 60s, or even the 70s, I've got some good decades there.
All right, Doug, who's going to take home this week's winning answer? Doug says, "Hey there, stackers. I'm sweater weather lover and guy who loves imagining Joe's work in ROTC class. Joe's mom's neighbor, Doug. We were going to ask you how many hours did Joe last at the Citadel before receiving his first wedgie, but it turns out you can measure that in minutes, not hours, so we didn't go there. Instead, today we're talking fashion because we thought it'd be fun to have some laughs at the way Joe wrecked his credit while attending the Citadel by paying for a Nautica sweater with an American Express card, a company, by the way, that Joe later represented in the media. Don't they do any research before sending people out on the microphones? So what year was this credit-destroying fashion brand called Nautica founded? Well, if you said 1983, you'd be correct, which means Paula Pant takes home the win.
Wow.
What is going on here?
Amazing. Incredible. I'm going to have to buy a Nautica shirt to celebrate, or a Nautica sweater.
So
I have
when
to buy a Nautica sweater with my Amex.
I got to tell you, Paula, when OG said, well, I think it's a fairly recent brand, I'm like, oh, shit, he's not going to do this again, is he?
I think when you put it together that I didn't think of, Paula, which was what brand would the kids want? And like, how new does it have to be for kids to be interested in it? And if I think that's, I might have got a little closer if I would have thought through.
Yeah, and I think that's why you put it with Tommy Hilfiger, because I haven't looked this up, but I bet Tommy Hilfiger, if we did look it up, if somebody wants to do that, came out probably around the same time.
I think well, them, Ralph Lauren.
Yes.
you know, kind of all those Tom Ford, maybe like kind of all those, that vibe was around.
When was Tommy Hilfiger brand founded? I'm being told it's 1985.
Oh,
So very, 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 very similar time between Nautica and Tommy. And to your point, also a very similar look. All right, let's dive into the second half of our discussion on work-life balance, work-life alignment, or maybe I like what Jennifer, who's hanging out with us, talked about. Maybe it's being present in what you're doing. Let's shift this kind of to work-life integration, because this is a question we get often, and I think people ask often, Paula. So do you think blending work and life is more honest? Because you were talking about now that it's kind of blurred, right? The lines are blurred between when I'm home and when I'm at work. So is blending more honest, or does that just blur boundaries until we burn out because work is following us home? It's following us on the weekends. There's no lines anymore.
I think it's just more honest to the way in which we live, because the reality is, it does, like, there is no, it's just technology is such that we are reachable 24 hours a day. That was not the case back when we were in the era of landlines. Even then, when fax machines first came about, people were like, oh, look at how much technology is advancing. And it's only getting even more intense. Now, I get, when somebody buzzes on Slack, I get a notification on my wristwatch, right? And I want to make a note here that I'm specifically talking about knowledge workers, because certainly if you, if you drive a truck, it's different. But even still, there's so much identity tied up in work. You go to a party and everyone's first question is, so what do you do? And then that often, because that's the icebreaker, leads to just talking about work, even when you're at the backyard barbecue.
Right.
Right. And so even if you're not on your phone, even if you have your notifications silenced, even if you have, the type of job that really respects boundaries, you're still thinking about it. You're still percolating on it. You're still talking about it. So I think that we just need to accept that, because that is the reality of modern work.
I don't know. Do we have to accept it, Jesse? I mean, I get just hearing Paula talk about, I'm at the cookout. I'm not really paying attention because my brain is on work. My wristwatch buzzes and I'm looking at my wristwatch instead of talking to you. Like, I feel like this work distracting us with everything just leads me to less balance.
Yeah. I am bad at this. Like, full disclosure, I am bad at this. But on the infrequent occasion where I've, whether intentionally or just kind of accidentally, I've been able to ignore notifications for like a full day or even like half a day, right? Instead of having Outlook and Gmail constantly open in the background, I just shut them down and don't look at them for 4 or 6 hours or the entire day. Like, I get to the end of the day.
Hold on, Jesse. 4 whole hours you go without?
I know. Exactly. I mean, just the way I'm describing this ought to tell you something about where my baseline is at, right? But
I have a solution for this, buddy.
I know. And this is, by all means, listeners, write in. Tell me what I'm doing wrong. I guess what I'm saying, what I found is that I become extremely, my productivity gets way better because I'm not constantly distracted. And then, do the people on the other end of the email notice the difference? I'm pretty sure they don't. Right. In other words, like, my communication to them is just as good. My ability to respond quickly is just as good, because 99% of people out there, they don't care if I respond to them in 15 minutes or in a day, for the most part. And so for that reason, I guess what I'm saying is I ought to be better at just checking email once a day, responding to everything, and then not checking it again until the next day. But like Paula, and like I think a lot of people out there, I fall into this trap of the phone is buzzing, my desktop is dinging, people are calling me, Facebook this, whatever it may be, like notification. And then next thing you know, you're kind of caught in the hamster wheel of always responding, and then more notifications come in.
I do want to make a note that specifically when I mentioned Slack buzzes on my wristwatch, the reason I specifically talked about Slack is because I distinguish between internal communication with my team, which I am ultra highly responsive to, versus email, which I check like once a decade.
And if people think she's joking, she's not.
Yeah. Yeah. Seriously. There are, well, Jesse, you
Yep,
sent me an email and like a month later, I was like, oh, hey, just saw this.
Oh, look at this.
Look at that. You emailed me in May.
I was like, Paula, in 6 weeks, I'm going to release this cool multi-person podcast episode. I'd love for you to participate. And like 3 months later, she's like, hey, how did this turn out? How did it go?
Yeah.
That is, and for anybody that has a really hard time with distraction, I really like this book, The Power of Fun by Catherine Price. You can watch her TED Talk, which has had millions of views. It's a fantastic book, but chapter 3, I think, is called Why You Feel Dead Inside. And it is this idea that we're so distracted, Jesse, to your point, we're so distracted and we're getting that dopamine hit from our phone over and over and over and over and over, that when real dopamine stuff happens, we don't feel it anymore because we're so addicted to our phone and that distraction that we're not finding what she calls true fun in our life.
That's super scary. That's genuinely frightening. And, my wife right now is reading, is it The Anxious Generation by Jonathan Haidt? He's like an NYU psychology professor. And it's because we have a daughter, we have a kid, and we're thinking about like, man, I think about it all the time. Like my daughter is never going to know a world. She already doesn't know a world without smartphones and social media. And like, what does that do to a person when they're potentially exposed to these like dopamine machines from such an early age? But yeah, I know exactly what you're referring to there, Joe. Maybe not through like personal experience, because I don't know about you guys. I don't have a really good way of monitoring my dopamine levels. But just through hearing other people talk about that fact, where
my dopamine is up.
Exactly. Like we become so used to we become so used to the dopamine hits that we get from notifications and this kind of social engineering that these big companies have done, that we forget about the fact that it's like, oh yeah, like a nice sunset with an ice cream cone is supposed to be this magical experience, but it doesn't feel that magical because no one's liking my photo on Facebook right now. And it's like, okay, that's a bit of a problem. So anyway, I don't know what the answer is. I just know
weird
it's a problem.
That we're addicted to the thumb up? Right. Like it's crazy. Just a stranger gives me a thumb up and I feel this warm fuzzy. Who the hell cares?
Right.
Versus, exactly. and in chapter 1 of her book, Jesse, Catherine talks about the fact that she had just had a baby. She's sitting with her baby and they had just remodeled their kitchen, and she grabs her phone while she's holding on to her baby, and she starts flipping through furniture, even though she's already completely bought the furniture. It was just a reflex now. And then she looks and her daughter's staring at her and she goes, I'm looking at stuff I don't care about that I've already bought when this living human being is not getting any attention from me. It's just horrible. Shane hanging out with us says, that's why I turn off my phone notifications for social media. I check it only once a day. It drives my wife nuts. It's funny. Well, OG, you and I talk about strategic coach. I mean, one of the first things that they talk about is what Jennifer's talking about here, which is presence, about getting rid of the distractions. When you're at home, be at home. And when you're away, when you're at work, be at work.
It takes so much, energy is not the right word here, but belief that it's not going to, the world's not going to fall apart. Your world's not going to fall apart without your constant supervision and attention on whatever it is that you're doing. So, to your point, Jesse, about email and that sort of thing, obviously Paula's mastered this. Like, to my knowledge, Paula's pretty successful, doesn't check email, still successful, right? Like, It's okay. You don't have to. You just take it off your phone, buddy. Just take it off. Just take it off. We'll sit here. We'll wait. You can grab your phone. You can do it.
I felt like this went from a podcast episode to an intervention. Are we?
Well, it said he can only make it 4 hours without checking his email. It's like,
Jesse, there's a reason we invite you here today.
Yeah. Have a seat, buddy.
Take a seat, Jesse.
Have a seat, buddy.
Sit down and shut the door.
We all love you very much, right?
Yeah, we
all
love you
care
so
about
much.
you and just want to see you happy. And
Will you text that to me instead?
yes.
That's a joke.
Speaking of, because then you get the dopamine hit from quitting.
Yes.
Exactly.
Speaking of good books, another book that I love is Jim Loehr and Tony Schwartz wrote a book a number of years ago called The Power of Full Engagement. And they talk about treating yourself like a tennis player, where there are days that you need to show up and there are days that you don't need to show up. And we talked earlier, Paula, about sprints, and this kind of gets back to the sprint idea. Tennis players play in tournaments all year long, and yet they really are only 100% engaged on 4 or 5, that they really want to the majors. They got to be there for the majors. Golfers are kind of the same way. Like, I feel like, Paula, maybe if we looked at ourselves more like we're an athlete in our life, and we're like, I've got these times when I need to show up, and I got these other times that I'm in quote training for those times. Maybe that would work better.
Yeah. I mean, I that goes back to, exactly as you said, the interval training, the sprint rest. You think athletes have their off season, and they have their on season. And even in the middle of a game, they have a halftime, right?
Yeah. Right.
And no one says halftime is for the lazy players, right?
Right. You're so lazy. You got to take a break halfway through.
Yeah, exactly.
Mr. Pro football player. Yeah. Yeah. OG, do you think it work that way in terms of on season, off season?
Everything I think of in that way. Yeah. Whether it's training for athletic stuff, whether it's eating and how that fuel can cycle both on a daily basis, but then kind of over time. And then certainly for work, right? Like there's periods of time where we've intentionally been a little lighter in, review meetings and that sort of thing. Here, it's a great example. We spend, our team takes from the time that we start asking for stuff to have a review meeting until a review meeting is maybe about a month. Sometimes that's because it takes a while for people to go, oh yeah, I need to send this in. But sometimes it's just because that's the pace in which we go. And so we intentionally don't have meetings in January, review meetings in January, because that would mean our behind the scenes team would be fully working in December, in the last couple of weeks of December, getting ready for those meetings that would happen in the second week of January. And that just seems to me to be fairly unfair.
Yeah.
like everybody else is like, it's the end of the year, let's kind of be, and it's like the prep team is like going, oh, it's not the end of the year for us. We're up to our eyeballs in work. And so we intentionally say, well, no, we're not going to have meetings in January or, scheduled meetings in January, because then that gives everybody the same treatment in terms of time off.
But then in March, you're cranking. In March, that's
the trade-off. And you have to remember that. I think if you're going to have periods of cycles like this, whether it's work or exercise or whatever, there's a time where you have the cut phase, where you're like getting skinny for your, summer bod. And then there's like and then there's the period of time where you're bulking up and the scale is going to move. And you can't just look at it on a daily basis and go like, oh my gosh, the scale's going up. Well, yeah, it's because that's the season you're in. That's the time that you're in. But when it's time to do the other stuff, it's time to do the other stuff. You can't always be in let's eat cupcake stage, of your life. And you can't always be in, well, it's always January, so we don't have work to do, so that's the trade. The trade is, if we're going to have periods of time where it's a lot less busy, then we have to be okay with periods of time where it's a little bit busier.
Jesse, as a business athlete yourself, I like the idea that Paula talked about of even halftime in a football game. Like, even for overachievers, right? Like NFL football players, it's a time when an overachiever goes, you know what? I got to relax for a few minutes before I hit it hard again. How do you experience that halftime? Like, how do you schedule that out? We heard OG the way that he does it, by setting up his calendar. How do you do it?
Mm-hmm. Still working on it. I think that's maybe my first answer. Still working on it a little bit. For me, I will say my weekdays in the office, maybe I kind of partition my brain a lot of times that when I'm sitting at this desk, this very desk I'm sitting at right now, I'm very much in work mode. And that is both the content work and also the client work. Whereas when I'm home, I try really hard, especially when my family is awake. I try really hard to not be in work mode.
To be present.
To be present, exactly. I'm not always perfect at it, but one thing, like, do you guys ever hear that one thing? I remember people would say it in college. I never subscribed to it until much later in life. They said, if you take a test in like sweatpants and a hoodie versus if you kind of wear some nicer pants, you tuck your shirt in, you dress up a little bit, that your brain will kind of be in a bit more of a professional mood to take your test, and you'll actually perform better.
There have been studies done on this. I mean, it's
exactly.
a fact. It's a fact.
Exactly. So I didn't do that in college. I just wore whatever the hell I wanted. But now I kind of feel it. Like, and part of that I think extends beyond just what you're wearing to where you are, right? It's part of your environment. So when I'm here at the office, I'm very much in work mode. And when I am at home, I try to detach as best I can. So that's probably the best way that personally, like, that's where my halftime is. It's once I'm at home until I'm back in the office the next day, or it's the weekends. And even now, if I need to work on a weekend, I try hard not to just break out my laptop at home for 4 hours and work. I'd rather drive into the office and actually physically move myself to the workplace in order to get things done.
It's funny how for all of us, it's a work in progress. We were talking about the phone earlier. I used to make a big deal at going to a restaurant with people, and I take the phone, I put it face down, and I put it in the middle of the table. And then I remember hearing Simon Sinek go, when you put your phone down in the middle of the table, you're telling everybody that this is super important to me. And I'm going to take a short break where this thing that's way more important than you, because I set it right out in the middle of the table, I'm going to take a break from that. He's like, if it truly is important, you just put it in your pocket. And which now I'm trying to do. So I think, like you, it's a work in progress for all of us. Well, hopefully we helped a few of our stackers with some work-life balance. Is it work-life balance, work-life alignment, presence? I think those are all worthy topics to end this week, where on Wednesday we talked about really entrepreneurship and building America and working hard. So let's talk about, speaking of hard work, the hard work you guys do wherever you're at. OG, what are you going to work on this mid-August weekend?
I am working on my athletic work. So lots of fun outdoor athletic stuff every weekend for the foreseeable future. So busy.
I'm laughing at some of the comments, OG, as you're talking. Dan likes to bulk up with Christmas cookies, so that's part of his.
That's the seasonality.
Part of his work. And Shane is asking if that's why Doug is unprofessional, because he comes to the podcast with no pants. He would do better. He would do much better. Doug, you'd do much better if you would wear pants. Paula, speaking of pants, Paula Pant.
Speaking of no pants.
What's going on at the Afford Anything podcast?
On the Afford Anything podcast, we have an interview with Lori Rosenkopf. She is a professor of management at Wharton Business School and the head of venture.
Heard of it.
Yeah, it's this little place in Pennsylvania. She's also the director of Venture Labs, and she talks about the 7 different types of entrepreneurs. So oftentimes we have this media image of the entrepreneur as the disruptor, somebody who comes in and creates the next Airbnb or the next Uber and totally disrupts an industry. And they're, seeded by all kinds of venture capital and create this unicorn. And she talks about how that is one of 7 types, sure, But there are all of these other varieties of type of entrepreneurs. There are some people who are funders. There are some people who are social entrepreneurs. There's some who are bootstrappers. And so we go through the 7 archetypes of entrepreneurship.
When you said funders, I thought you were saying thunders with a lisp. And I was like, who's a thunder?
Like the Thundercats.
The Thundercats. You got to be a person of a certain age to be a Thundercats fan. And that's at Afford Anything.
That's on the Afford Anything podcast.
Or the finest
available.
Podcasts.
Yes, wherever you enjoy downloading podcasts, we're there.
Jesse, when people enjoy downloading your podcast, what will they hear this fine week?
This fine week, they're going to hear Ask Me Anything episode number 8, which just came out a few days ago. Or depending if they get to Stacking Benjamins a little bit after the Friday episode comes out, they might hear an episode with Kellen Klein about he's a cool entrepreneur who I've gotten to interact with here in Rochester. And we talk a little bit about some of the interesting lessons that he learned from quitting his full-time job and diving headfirst into running his own now very successful business.
Wow, cool. What type of business?
It's actually funny. It's content creation. It's have you heard of The Savvy Couple? Have you heard of that brand?
Savvy Couple, yeah, sure.
Yeah, so that's Kellen and his wife, Brittany. Sorry if I got that wrong, Kellen. I almost want to look it up and re-record it if I did get it wrong. Sorry about this, everyone who's watching this live. Yeah, it is. Steve, it is Brittany. So I'll just do 3, 2, 1.
Yes.
Yeah, so it's a online content brand, much like our own, The Savvy Couple, Kellen and his wife Brittany, who live just west of Rochester out in the burbs. And he and I discovered one another at one point and started chatting. And it's a really cool business. And he's really done a lot of they've been really successful with it. So he's got some interesting lessons to share with all of us.
I love it when you can get together with people offline who all work online together. Mm-hmm. I just met 2 gentlemen in Texarkana who have 1 million followers. They're storm chasers, and they're YouTube storm chasers. And we've got a guy who does photography on YouTube with about 200,000 followers. Of course, Devin Carroll, Social Security expert, is here. And I'm like, we got to start doing our Texarkana meetup group, maybe.
Yeah.
Super fun.
Well,
that's really cool.
This is where the thunder entrepreneurship comes from. The storm chasers.
This is that's the thunder. Yeah, the thunder. That's going to do it for today. That is the thunder and the lightning and everything else. Thank you, everybody, for hanging out with us. If you want to watch this being made, hang out with us on Monday afternoons. That is at 3:30 Eastern time. Generally, we start within about 15 minutes of that time. So come say hi and hang out like all the people hanging out with us today. Thanks for being a part of the show. And if you know somebody that should hear this show, they maybe have some problems with their cell phone with distractions, or just they feel burnt out, man. This is a great discussion that we had today. So please forward it to those people. But at the end of every episode, we hand it over to you again, Doug. Doug, what should be on our to-do list today? All right. First, take some advice from Paula. Paula, what's that one thing you said?
Remember, if you're ever playing football, halftime is not just for the lazy players.
It's for the overachievers.
Exactly. Yeah. Exactly.
And then second, take some advice from Jesse.
I was hoping you'd call on OG.
Celebrate your bucket days.
How about there are many ways to get work-life balance right, and maybe you can take a page from OG's book and vacation yourself first.
But the big lesson, you should all be sad now Joe got better with money, because now when we go to the Sizzler, instead of him buying like in the old days, he's happy to let me pay. Not cool. Why can't we focus on helping my credit? And then blah, 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 blah. All right. That's it. We did it. Nice job, guys. Thank you so much for hanging out with us, everybody. And we'll see you next time. Hang on, contributors.